The Graham family had spent decades standing in front of millions with strength, faith, and courage. But behind the cameras and behind the packed arenas was a family that also carried pain, sacrifice, and emotional struggles that few people truly understood. For years, Pastor Franklin Graham continued the legacy of his father, Billy Graham, while trying to guide his own family through moments that tested their hearts in ways nobody could imagine. And when heartbreaking news began spreading across Christian communities, many people were left shocked, emotional, and searching for answers. The news was not about fame, wealth, or success. IT was about loss. IT was about the emotional burden that comes with carrying one of the most famous religious legacies in modern history. And according to people close to the family, the weight of that responsibility had deeply affected everyone connected to the Graham name. Supporters around the world began posting prayers online. Churches mentioned the family during services. Messages poured in from people who had followed Billy Graham for generations. Some said they felt like they were watching the end of an era. Others feared that the emotional struggles surrounding the family had finally reached a breaking point. For Franklin Graham, the moment became deeply personal. He had spent much of his life traveling the world preaching hope, helping disaster victims, and encouraging people to keep their faith during difficult times. But suddenly he found himself facing emotional pain inside his own world. People who knew the family said the atmosphere had become incredibly emotional. Private conversations reportedly turned into moments filled with tears, reflection, and memories of Billy Graham and Ruth Graham. Many family members were said to be overwhelmed by grief as they reflected on how quickly life changes. One close friend described the family as emotionally exhausted. They explained that carrying the expectations of millions while dealing with personal heartbreak had become almost unbearable at times. And for the first time in a long time, Franklin Graham appeared quieter, more reflective, and deeply emotional. The heartbreaking news immediately sparked discussions across social media. Supporters shared old photos of Billy Graham preaching to massive crowds, while others posted emotional messages thanking the Graham family for decades of ministry. Many people admitted they had grown up watching Billy Graham sermons with their parents and grandparents, making the moment feel even more personal. As the story spread, millions waited to hear directly from Franklin Graham himself. When Franklin Graham finally addressed supporters, his words carried deep emotion. He spoke slowly, carefully, and honestly about the struggles his family had been facing behind closed doors. According to viewers, it was one of the most emotional public appearances he had made in years. He talked about the pain of watching time change everything he reflected on, losing loved ones over the years, and how difficult it had been to keep moving forward while carrying memories of his parents. Billy Graham had become one of the most respected religious leaders in the world, and his passing left a massive emotional hole inside the family. Franklin admitted that no amount of public support could fully prepare someone for personal grief. He explained that even families known for strength and faith still experience heartbreak, fear, and uncertainty. And for many watching, his honesty felt incredibly real. Some supporters became emotional hearing Franklin speak about family memories. He described moments from childhood when Billy Graham would return home after long crusades. He remembered family dinners, private prayers, and the quiet moments that the public never saw. He also shared how difficult it was seeing family members age while trying to preserve the legacy left behind by his parents. According to Franklin, every holiday gathering now carried emotional reminders of people who were no longer there. Many viewers noticed that Franklin appeared visibly emotional several times during the speech. His voice reportedly trembled while discussing his mother, Ruth Graham, and the powerful influence she had on the entire family. He described her as the emotional center of their home and admitted that losing her changed the family forever. The emotional message quickly spread online. Clips of the speech were reposted across social media platforms with millions of views. Comment sections filled with prayers, cry emojis, and stories from people who said Billy Graham's sermons had changed their lives. For older supporters, the moment felt especially heartbreaking. Many said they remember watching Billy Graham preach on television decades ago and never imagined the family would one day be sharing such emotional struggles publicly. Religious leaders from around the world also responded. Some praised Franklin Graham for being honest about grief, while others encouraged people to continue praying for the family during such a difficult season. But as emotions continued rising, another painful detail about the family situation began gaining attention. According to people close to the Graham family, one of the hardest parts of the situation involved the emotional pressure of preserving a global legacy. Being connected to the Graham name brought admiration, respect, and influence. but also brought enormous expectations. For decades, people looked at the family as symbols of strength, faith, and moral leadership. But behind the scenes, family members reportedly struggled with the same emotional challenges faced by countless ordinary families. Franklin Graham reportedly admitted that living under the shadow of such a massive legacy had not always been easy. He explained that his father, Billy Graham, became larger than life to millions around the world. But to the family, he was still a father, grandfather, and husband. That difference created emotional tension over the years. Publicly, Billy Graham was viewed almost like a spiritual giant, but privately the family still experienced ordinary moments, arguments, fears, and heartbreak. Some reports suggested that preserving the ministry while managing personal emotions became exhausting for several family members. There were moments of disagreement, moments of stress, and moments when emotional weight became overwhelming. People close to the family said the heartbreaking news had forced everyone to slow down and reflect. They realized that life was moving faster than expected, and that even famous families cannot escape loss, aging, and emotional pain. The emotional situation reportedly became even harder because millions of supporters constantly looked toward the family for inspiration. That meant Franklin Graham often felt pressure to appear strong even during deeply painful moments. One longtime supporter explained that people sometimes forget pastors and ministry leaders are human too. They experience grief, loneliness, and heartbreak just like everyone else. But because they are public figures, many feel forced to hide their struggles. That idea resonated strongly online. Many supporters began posting messages encouraging pastors and ministry leaders to speak more openly about emotional pain and family struggles. Meanwhile, others began revisiting old interviews with Billy Graham, searching for wisdom and comfort in his past words. Many clips went viral again, especially moments where Billy Graham talked about heaven, family, and eternal hope. For millions, those old sermons suddenly felt more emotional than ever before. As public attention continued growing, many people became curious about the relationship between Franklin Graham and his famous father. For years, rumors, stories, and speculation surrounded the Graham family. Some believed Franklin faced tremendous pressure growing up as the son of one of the most respected evangelists in history. Franklin himself had openly admitted in past interviews that his younger years were filled with rebellion. He struggled with authority, made reckless decisions, and often resisted the expectations placed upon him. At one point, some people even believed he might never continue the Graham ministry legacy. But over time, his life changed dramatically. He eventually embraced faith more seriously, and later stepped into major leadership roles connected to Samaritan's Purse and the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. Even with those accomplishments, however, the emotional burden remained enormous. Many people close to the family believe Franklin constantly felt pressure to protect his father's reputation while also building his own identity. That pressure reportedly became emotionally exhausting over the years, especially during moments of family loss and personal reflection. Some supporters expressed sympathy for Franklin, saying they could not imagine spending a lifetime being compared to a global icon. Others admired his willingness to continue preaching and leading ministries despite carrying such emotional responsibilities. During one emotional appearance, Franklin reportedly reflected on conversations he once had with Billy Graham. He says father always reminded the family that fame, success, and influence mean nothing without faith, family, and personal peace. Those words suddenly carried much deeper meaning after the heartbreaking news spread. Many supporters shared a quote online, calling it one of the most emotional reminders from the Graham family. Meanwhile, churches around the world continued organizing prayer gatherings. People prayed not only for Franklin Graham, but for every member of the family. Some asked for healing. Some prayed for peace. And others simply thanked the family for decades of ministry and inspiration. For a moment, it seemed like millions of strangers had united emotionally around one family. But behind all the emotional tributes, another difficult reality was quietly unfolding. The heartbreaking news also reopened painful conversations about the sacrifices required by ministry life. For decades, the Graham family spent countless hours traveling, speaking, leading crusades, and responding to global disasters. That lifestyle inspired millions, but it also came with personal costs. Family friends admitted that constant travel often kept loved ones apart for long periods of time. There were missed birthdays, missed holidays, and emotional moments sacrificed because ministry responsibilities always came first. Billy Graham himself once admitted that his ministry work required enormous sacrifice from his wife and children. Those words resurfaced online after Franklin Graham's emotional statements, causing many supporters to reflect deeply on the hidden struggles faced by ministry families. Some viewers became emotional hearing stories about Ruth Graham, holding the family together while Billy Graham traveled the world preaching. She reportedly carried much of the emotional responsibility inside the home, especially during difficult seasons. Franklin often described his mother as strong, compassionate, and deeply wise. According to him, she helped the family survive many painful moments behind closed doors. After her passing, many people close to the family noticed major emotional changes. The family reportedly struggled with grief while also trying to continue public ministry responsibilities. Franklin later admitted that losing both parents forced him to confront his own mortality. He explained that seeing family members disappear one by one changes how a person views life, time, and purpose. Supporters around the world related strongly to those emotions. Many shared personal stories online about losing parents, grandparents, and loved ones. Some said the Graham family's honesty helped them feel less alone in their own grief. The same time critics and media commentators began discussing the intense public pressure placed upon famous religious families. They argued that public faith leaders often avoid conversations about grief, weakness, and emotional exhaustion. But according to supporters, Franklin's honesty made the message far more powerful. Online discussions surrounding the family continued growing. Some people revisited documentaries, interviews, and old family photos. Many became emotional seeing Billy and Ruth Graham smiling together during earlier decades before fame and age changed everything. Others reflected on how rapidly time changes. Families point one moment children are young and parents appear strong. Then suddenly entire generations begin disappearing. That emotional reality became one of the biggest reasons the story touched so many people around the world. Millions realized the Graham family was experiencing the same painful truth every family eventually faces. And for Franklin Graham, that reality appeared to weigh heavily on his heart. As the emotional story continued spreading, one theme kept appearing repeatedly across interviews, social media posts, and public reactions. People believed the Graham family represented something larger than fame, religion, or public influence. They represented legacy. For generations, the Graham name became connected with faith, compassion, ministry, and hope. That legacy inspired millions across different countries, cultures, and generations. But the heartbreaking news reminded everyone that even powerful legacies cannot stop human pain. Franklin Graham reportedly told supporters that every family eventually faces moments of heartbreak, uncertainty, and grief. He encouraged people to spend more time with loved ones, forgive old wounds, and appreciate life while they still can. That message triggered emotional reactions everywhere. Comment sections filled with people apologizing to family members, reconnecting with relatives, and sharing stories about loved ones they wish they had appreciated more. Several churches even built entire sermons around the emotional lessons connected to the Graham family situation. Pastors encouraged congregations to value relationships more deeply and not become consumed by worldly distractions. Meanwhile, supporters continued praying for Franklin Graham and his family. Many believe the emotional pain they experienced would ultimately strengthen their faith and bring people closer together. Others simply thanked the family for showing vulnerability during such a difficult time in a world where many public figures hide emotional struggles behind polished appearances. Franklin Graham's honesty stood out to many viewers. Some supporters described the situation as heartbreaking, but also strangely inspiring. They admired the family's willingness to keep speaking about hope, faith, and love, even while carrying emotional pain. And as millions continued watching, listening, and reflecting, one final emotional message from Franklin Graham began spreading rapidly online. What many described as his most emotional statement. Franklin Graham reminded supporters that life on earth is temporary. He said every family eventually experiences heartbreak, loss, and moments that completely change them forever. But according to him, faith helps people continue moving forward even when emotions become overwhelming. He encouraged people not to waste time holding grudges, chasing meaningless success, or ignoring loved ones. He explained that at the end of life, family memories, love, and faith matter far more than money, fame, or public recognition. Those words spread across social media almost instantly. Many viewers called the message deeply moving, while others admitted they broke down crying after hearing it. Supporters from around the world continued sending prayers, encouragement, and emotional tributes. Some shared photos of old Billy Graham crusades. Others posted stories about how the Graham family influenced their lives over the years. For many people, the heartbreaking news became more than just another headline. IT became a reminder of how fragile life truly is. That IT reminded millions that no family is immune from grief, not even families admired by the entire world. And while the Graham family continues navigating emotional challenges, supporters everywhere remain hopeful that faith, love, and unity will carry them through the difficult season. One thing became clear throughout the emotional story. The Graham family's influence was never only about sermon stages or public appearances. IT was about the human connection they created with millions of people around the world. Even during heartbreak,